Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is lecture 4 of series 4, Constitution of 1956, Powers and Functions of President. So, this is lecture 4. So, three aspects are very important. Before this, it is essential to discuss. Article 39. The executive authority of the Federation in the Constitution of 1956 was vested in the President and was to be exercised by him in accordance with the Constitution. So the executive authority of the Federation was vested in the President. Three things are always important. Number one, appointment, method of appointment of the President. Number two, method of impeachment of the President. And number three, powers and functions of the President. As far as appointment is concerned, Article 32, Article 33 and Article 34 are relevant to this. The first, Article 32, reads as, he must be a Muslim. These are qualifications to become a president. Number one, he must be a Muslim, age not less than 40 years, qualified for election as a member of the National Assembly. D. Electoral college comprising of members of the National Assembly and the Provincial Assembly. 33 reads about the term of the president, that was 5 years, and this was also condition laid down by the Constitution of the President. He will not join any office of the Prophet. However, he was entitled to look after his own property. So this was election of the President. In the parliamentary system, President is not much more powerful, so that is always ceremonial. So in this way, this electoral college was good for the election of the President in this situation. However, in case of Pakistan, President was given some powers which made the President more powerful. As far as impeachment is concerned, this is discussed in Article 25. President might resign. Number one, the President might resign. अगर वो खुद इस्तीफा देना चाहे तो ऐसी सूरत में वो ओहदे से हट सकता है. Second, or might on a charge of violating the Constitution or of gross misconduct be impeached by the National Assembly by an absolute majority. मिसाल के अगर प्रेसिडेंट जो है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को वायलेट करता है, ग्रॉस मिसकंडक्ट करता है, तो असेंबली, नेशनल असेंबली उसका मुआवजा कर सकती है एब्सोल्यूट मेजॉरिटी के साथ. एब्सोल्यूट मेजॉरिटी से मुराद ये है वाज़े अक्सरियत जिसको कहा जा सकता है, यानी टोटल मेंबर्स का मोर देन 50% अगर वोट देगा तो वो इम्पीच हो जाएगा. बड़ा आसान तरीका था, ये कोई बहुत मुश्किल नहीं था इम्पीचमेंट ऑफ द प्रेसिडेंट के लिए. थर्ड, पावर्स. सो पावर्स, there are two kinds of power which were given to the president. Number one, discretionary powers. Number two, powers exercised on the advice of the cabinet. Powers exercised on the advice of the cabinet. So discretionary powers, सवाबदीदी इख्तियारात जो हैं वो भी सदर को काफ़ी हासिल थे. Number one, appointment of chairman and members of Federal Public Service Commission. This was very important power which was given to the President of Pakistan. Number two, Chief Election Commissioner and members of Election Commission. So, Chief Election Commissioner and members of Election Commission. So, the President was empowered to appoint them through his discretionary powers. Chairman and members of delimitation commissions. So this was also in the discretionary powers. Appointment of the Prime Minister. This was the very important power, and which was criticized by some quarters, because this power was misused previously uh, in previously by the various uh, governor generals and president. So, appointment of the prime minister, the most important discretionary power of the president was to appoint from among the members of the National Assembly a prime minister who, in his opinion, was most likely to command the confidence of the majority of the members of National Assembly. तो इसमें आप देख लें कि पहले अब हमारे यहाँ पहले एतमाद लिया जाता है, एतमाद का वोट लिया जाता है। तो इसमें प्राइम मिनिस्टर का यह स्वाबदीदी इख्तियार था कि वो असेंबली के मेंबरान में से किसी को भी प्राइम मिनिस्टर अपॉइंट कर दे, और वो बाद में जो है अपनी मेजॉरिटी शो करता था। तो इसमें जहाँ पे बिलखसूस दो जमाती निज़ाम मजबूत रहा, ये पावर हिंदुस्तान में भी है और भी कॉमनवेल्थ कंट्रीज़ में है, लेकिन वहाँ पे ये पावर मिसयूज़ नहीं होती। तो ऐसे ममालिक जिस तरह के पाकिस्तान है, जहाँ पे दो पार्टी निज़ाम मजबूत नहीं होता, मल्टी पार्टी सिस्टम है, तो वहाँ पे इस पावर का मिसयूज होना एक फितरी अमल है। और ये आप 50s के अशरे में इसको काफ़ी मिसयूज किया गया, और इसके बाद प्रोविंस में हुसैन सरकार की हुकूमत को चंद ही घंटों के बाद फारिग कर दिया गया था। इसके ऊपर एतराज़ हुआ। Other powers were exercised on the advice of the cabinet in the Constitution of 1956. There were some of the key appointments, such as Chief Justice of Supreme Court and judges of the Supreme Court and High Court, the governors of provinces, the Advocate General, principal military officers were made by the President on the advice of the cabinet. Constitution of commission and bodies and appointment of members. So he would constitute the National Economic Council, the National Finance Commission, the Inter-Provincial Council, the Commission for bringing the existing laws into conformity with the injunctions of Islam, and the Organization for Islamic Research and Instruction. As you know, this provision is available in the Constitution of 1956. I discussed during the Islamic provisions in the Constitution of 1956, in which a commission was required to for the research and laws. This was discussed in detail there. Armed Forces, Supreme Commander of Armed Forces was President of Pakistan. The administration of federal capital was vested in the President. He was also given powers to grant pardon and remit, suspend or commute a sentence passed by any tribunal. So this is ये पावर बड़ा अरसा से अब भी है और पहले भी थी कि जिसमें अदालत से कोई सज़ा हो जाए तो ऐसी सूरत में सदर के पास ये इख्तियार है, लेकिन ये ऑन द एडवाइस ऑफ द कैबिनेट ही है कि उनको माफ़ कर सकता है. लेजिस्लेटिव फंक्शंस to be exercised on the advice of the cabinet. He could summon and prorogue the meeting of National Assembly, dissolve the National Assembly on the advice of the cabinet, in the draft constitution of the Second Constituent Assembly, there was a provision that the President might, in his discretion, dissolve the National Assembly if he is satisfied that it had ceased to command the confidence of the majority electorate. This proposal raised strong protest both inside and outside the assembly, and consequently, the constitution provided that the dissolution should take place on the advice of the cabinet. Legislation. Uh, Very important power. Budget. No bill imposing taxation or involving expenditure from the federal consolidated fund could be moved without the president's recommendations. ये बड़ा अहम था कि अगर कंसोलिडेटेड फंड के बारे में कोई बिल है तो वो सदर की मंजूरी के बगैर, रिकमेंडेशन के बगैर नहीं आ सकता था. He could either assent to the bill or withhold his assent. If withhold assent, in this case, National Assembly should again pass the bill with or without amendment by a majority of 2/3 of those present. Then President was bound to assent it. He could also send a bill for reconsiderations if such a bill was passed again by the majority of the total members of the assembly. It must receive his assent. So इसमें तीन सूरतें थी. पहले अगर उसने असेंट दे दी तो वो मामला ठीक हो गया. दूसरा यह है कि अगर उसने असेंट विद होल्ड की प्रेसिडेंट ने, तो ऐसी सूरत में असेंबली जो है अगर दोबारा 2/3 मेजॉरिटी से उसको जो हाजिर मेंबर हैं उनकी 2/3 मेजॉरिटी से उसको पास कर देती है, तो ऐसी सूरत में वो बिल उसकी असेंट, प्रेसिडेंट के असेंट के बगैर पास हो जाएगा. और तीसरी सूरत ये है कि प्रेसिडेंट जो है उनको बिल रिकंसिडर करने के लिए वापस भेज देता है. तो ऐसी सूरत में असेंबली जो है वो सिर्फ सिंपल मेजॉरिटी से, टोटल मेंबर्स की सिंपल मेजॉरिटी से उसको अगर दोबारा पास कर देती है वो असेंटेड समझा जाएगा. सो ordinance when National Assembly was not in session, the President possessed the positive power of making laws by ordinance which would be laid before the National Assembly and would cease to operate at the expiration of 6 weeks from the next meeting of the National Assembly, or at same time as a resolution of disapproval should be passed by the National Assembly. So these were powers. Another very important power, that is emergency power. तो प्रेसिडेंट जो है, जैसा कि हमने शुरू में बताया है, उसकी डिस्क्रेशनरी पावर में था. तो इस पावर को बहुत ज़्यादा क्रिटिसाइज किया गया कि डिस्क्रेशनरी पावर के ज़रिए से इमरजेंसी नाफिज करने के बाद हकूक़, बुनियादी हकूक़ जो हैं वो महदूद हो जाते हैं और सूबाजात की ऑटोनॉमी जो है वो लिमिटाइज हो जाती है. लेकिन इसके बारे में इस किस्म की दलाइल दिए गए कि पाकिस्तान अपने शुरू के मराहल में है, इसलिए इसकी बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है. और ये पावर आज तक जो है वो प्रेसिडेंट, और 73 के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में भी ये पावर्स जो हैं, so they create imbalance between the president and the prime minister. So this was the constitution of 1956, powers and functions of the president in constitution of 1956. Thank you very much.